And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Problem is, we need toughness. Honestly, I think Jeb is a very nice person. He's a very nice person, but we need tough people. We need toughness. We need intelligence, and we need tough. Jeb said when they come across the southern border, they come as an act of love.
You said in September 30th that ISIS was not a
Am I
not
talking or are you talking, Jeb?
I'm talking right now. I'm talking.
You can go back. You're not talking. You interrupted me,
September 30th,
Are you going to apologize, Jeb? No. Am I allowed to finish?
Yeah, one at a time.
Excuse
Go ahead,
me. Am I allowed to finish?
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
So,
little of your
again,
own
I know you're trying to build up your energy,
please.
Jeff, but it's not working.
One at a time.
Yeah.
Look. We need a toughness. We need strength. We're not respected as a nation anymore. We don't have that level of respect that we need. And if we don't get it back fast, we're just going to go weaker, and just disintegrate. We can't allow that to happen. We need strength. We don't have it. When Jeb comes out and he talks about the border, and I saw it, and I was witness to it, and so was everyone else, and I was standing there, they come across as an act of love. He's saying the same thing right now with radical Islam. And we can't have that in our country. It just won't work. We need strength.
Governor Bush.
Donald, you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen. And I do have the strength. Leadership is not about attacking people and disparaging people. Leadership is about creating a serious strategy to deal with the threat of our time. And I laid out that strategy before the attacks in Paris and before the attacks in San Bernardino, and it is the way forward. We need to increase our military spending. We need to deal with a no-fly zone in Syria, a safe zone. We need to focus on building a military that is second to none so that we can destroy Islamic terrorism.
With Jeb's attitude, we will never be great again. That I can tell you.
Hey, you are listening to the Radio Free California Network, and I am your host, Tim Donnelly, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. We have an action-packed show planned for you today. We've got presidential candidate, Senator Rick Santorum, coming up. We're going to have Reagan babies, Megan Barthon. She was in the debate, in the audience, and she crashed some after parties and has a great report for us. And we've got all kinds of clips. You will not believe all of the things that happened last night. If you missed the debate, you missed a lot of what is going on in American politics. And it was an amazing night. By the way, I was a member of the press. We were there live and in person. And I went into the spin room. I armed by the chief engineer of the show, Sean McNeil, with a microphone and a recorder and some headphones, and stood patiently. And let me tell you, I have never witnessed anything like it. It is absolute mayhem. I've got a couple of pictures. We don't have them up yet, but we'll put them up a little bit later today. And you've just got to take a look. You will not believe how many people will crowd around a single individual speaking. So they created sort of this mosh pit for reporters to gather around. There were railings, the soft railing to kind of create a barrier, and each candidate would come out and they would have a flag bearer that would hold up their name, and then you'd see some of their entourage, and then of course the candidate would appear, and there would be a little ooh and ah in the crowd, and then some of them would go into the mosh pit, or they would go somewhere else. And it was funny, where we were sort of the place where everybody walked by but didn't stop. And we were not the mosh pit, but I don't know why. I just had a feeling that Donald Trump might be different. Dr. Gina Loudon was there. She had secured a place by the rail, and we hung out and waited. And finally, Donald Trump went into the mosh pit. Then he came out, then he walked along the railing. He stopped to take a question. And then I could see he was going every 3 or 4 or 5 feet and skipping people. And I just felt like we could hook him in. And I had the opportunity to ask him a question. And it was kind of an epic moment, because I thought, okay, what am I going to get to be able to pull this guy over here to actually answer a question? I mean, I'm Joe Nobody, right? Everybody else is dressed in suits and ties. Me, I'm dressed in a leather jacket, my hat, and what I usually wear. And I just said, hey, I said, look, and I said it in a rather loud voice. I said, you know that the GOP is going to play dirty tricks at the convention. And so I said, hey, do you have a plan to bring California into play to win those delegates? You know, to compensate. Something along those lines. And he stopped. He turned, came over. We've got pictures. There's a post up at timdonnellyshow.com. You can hear the clip. We'll play it a little bit later on in the show. And it was kind of a cool moment, because I've never been a member of the media. It was kind of funny cruising around and trying to corner candidates or other people on their team, because most of the time you're never going to be able to get to a candidate. You're only going to be able to get to somebody who is a communications manager or campaign manager. Well, even that on a presidential campaign is very high up. You're going to get some lackey. But we were able to talk to some pretty high-level individuals there, make some great connections, and we will be bringing you a representative from the Trump campaign on the show Monday the 21st. We have the national spokeswoman, Katrina Pearson, and my chief engineer tells me that we have our clip. So what we're going to do is play the clip, then we're going to take a break. Here it is. Mr. Trump, you know the GOP will pull dirty tricks at the convention. Do you plan to compete in California to offset that?
I don't think so. I don't think they will. I think they have to go with the will of the people. If I get the delegates, they're going to be with me 100%. And if I don't, that's my fault.
If you win a nomination, how are you going to celebrate?
Well, I don't want to celebrate until I beat Hillary Clinton. You know, a number of polls, Fox just came out, and under the Fox poll, I beat Hillary fairly soundly, and a few others just came out that I beat Hillary. But I'm not even focused on Hillary right now. We have 15 people. They're capable, they're smart, they're governors, they're senators. I have a long way to go. But this was a great evening for me, and I really enjoyed it.
I don't know if you heard, there was a very different tone there, much humbler. Before the individuals, the other 15 candidates, he had denigrated as having zero capabilities. Now he's giving them some credit. He is treading much more softly toward the GOP. Look, I got news for you. I don't think the GOP is going to change their game plan, and their game plan is to take him out and then to take out Ted Cruz if he rises as well. We're going to get into that and a lot more when we come back. 323-746-TALK is our number. Whatever you do, you don't want to miss a minute of today's show. Hey, if you're just tuning in, we are live here at the Radio Free California Network studios. We are back from Las Vegas, leaving Las Vegas this morning. Had a great time there, just kind of watching it all play out. I mean, unbelievable number of media, of press. And look, the whole thing was the Donald Trump show. It didn't matter. Here you had the Undercard Debate. And by the way, we're going to have the winner of that coming up here on the show, Rick Santorum. He stood out from the rest. I don't know why he is on the undercard. That man won Iowa. He won 11 states, all grassroots, last time he ran for president, and he brings a lot to the debate. I'd love to trade him for John Kasich. Please, for the love of God, would somebody tell John Kasich how annoying he is? I don't know how you get, but the guy's from Ohio. He's from Ohio, and there's not much you can do with somebody from Ohio. I'm sorry. I know I have some friends from Ohio. I know I'm going to get a lot of grief for this, but I went to Michigan, and, you know, why would you live in Ohio when you could live in Michigan? Why in the world is John Kasich still in the main stage debate? He doesn't belong there, and neither does Jeb Bush. But you know what Jeb Bush was last night? Jeb Bush is the establishment's dream, the dream candidate. He's soft and malleable on everything. He considers illegal immigration an act of love. Listen to Donald Trump use him as a punching bag.
This is a tough business to run for president.
I know. You're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is
real
principled.
tough.
You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see. I'm at 42 and you're at 3. So far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better. You know, you started off over here, Jeb. You're moving over further and further. Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
This doesn't do a thing to solve the problem.
One at a time.
It sounds more.
Hugh, go ahead.
I could listen to that all day. We have a lot of clips for you. There were a lot of epic moments, but Donald Trump pretty much owned the night. He owned Jeb Bush, and given his meteoric rise in the polls, that continues. Everybody said it couldn't happen. He couldn't get past 30. Now here he is at 41. I'm very anxious to see the next national poll, because I think after this debate, he's going to win over a lot more people, because he really handled himself well last night. He didn't go over the top as much as he usually does. He struck a much humbler tone. He even said that if he wins the nomination, or if he doesn't win the nomination, something to the effect that he's not going to run as a third party candidate, that he will respect the nomination. He was kowtowing to the Republican Party, which a lot of us don't like, but evidently those in the establishment like that. My only issue is he is acting as if he is dealing with people of honor, and those who run the GOP are snakes. They will stab him in the back. They will break their word. They will pretend they're going to do one thing, and they will do another. Clearly. Absolutely, unequivocally, they are plotting it even now. And so this thing is going, in my opinion, this is going to be hijacked by the GOP elite, or they're going to try at the convention. And you're going to have two really strong candidates coming in there, and a third one who's going to kind of mess everything up and create the ability for the brokering to take place. The rest of these guys, I think, are just going to fall off the map. And they'll fall into, you know, one of the other camps and maybe start bucking for a VP spot. That's how presidential campaigns go. But this kinder, I don't even know what to do with this kinder, gentler Trump. But I like him. A little humility suits him. It polishes him. He definitely came across much more serious, and he made some really great points and used humor. He does need to work on making the faces, but you can't see that on radio, so I guess that doesn't really matter. But there was another moment in the debate where let me set the stage for you first. So the debate is being held at this monolithic casino resort hotel known as the Venetian. And we drove in, they search your trunk, Secret Service everywhere. We get our press credentials. You know, they actually had, I'm not kidding, the TSA was searching us. It was a deja vu. And I won't say anything about the fact that I had a pocket knife when I went there, and they said, absolutely not, you can't bring it in. And if you give it to us, you ain't getting it back. And so I had to surrender it. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be in the press pool, which I needed to be. And then to get anywhere, just to get back to our room, was a half an hour walk. This place is massive. So as I was walking, I got lost, and I wound up right outside the lineup to the actual debate. And I put up a post on Facebook, and you can see it. Because if you were watching at home, you might have heard what sounded like really enthusiastic applause for Jeb Bush at certain moments. And it was true. You did. But as I walked by this lineup, it was definitely the trust fund babies, one percenters, and their trophy wives. That's except with a handful of exceptions, a few activists, a few ordinary people. But the national GOP, just like the California GOP, what they do when there's a big debate, they hand out tickets like candy to those who they believe will support their agenda and give the appearance to the entire audience, which is a brilliant move. I'll give it to them. That there's this tremendous support for these sleeper candidates like Jeb Bush and Lindsey Graham. Anyway, that guy is still he's still on the undercard, but he belongs somewhere else, maybe the Democrat Party. But here's the kicker. So you have all these candidates going in there. I'm sorry, all these sort of plants, and it backfired on them. Check this out this was a moment where the moderator, Hugh Hewitt, got into a lot of trouble when he went after Dr. Ben Carson in the rudest possible way.
Could you order airstrikes that would kill innocent children by not the scores, but the hundreds and the thousands? Could you wage war as a commander-in-chief?
Well, interestingly enough, you should see the eyes of some of those children when I say to them, we're going to have to open your head up and take out this tumor. They're not happy about it, believe me. And they don't like me very much at that point. But later on, they love me. Sometimes I sound like him. Later.
You are okay with the deaths of thousands of innocent children and civilians. It's like...
You got it.
Now that right there should tell you something. Even though it was a stacked crowd for Jeb Bush and establishment hacks, even they were horrified at the insane, rude, inappropriate, and idiotic question by Salem talk show host Hugh Hewitt, who's not making any friends in the Republican Party. I got to tell you, I don't know. Maybe. Hey, if you're a former recovering Hugh Hewitt listener, because we're in the same time slot, please call in 323-746-TALK. That's 323-746-8255. We've got Megan Barth, who writes. She's a blogger. She's writes at ReaganBaby.com, and she's going to be coming up right after this break. You won't want to miss it. She's got all kinds of inside scoops. Be right back. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor, back here in the state of California. And we have on the line with us now a special guest, somebody who was behind the scenes. Her name is Megan Barth. She is the founder and proprietor of ReaganBaby.com, a nationally recognized political commentator. She's been on a lot of other shows, including ours, is highly sought after. And Megan, welcome to the show.
Well, hello, Tim. Thanks for having me back.
It is fantastic to have you back.
It's the first time we've chatted since I became a veganite, or I don't even know what I call myself, but I'm now a resident of Las Vegas.
A vegan? I was worried that you are. Well, I thought you were going to say a vegan, which is fine, but as long as you're not trying to force me to give up my cheeseburgers. But and I'm really sorry. My wife and I were there, and I didn't get a chance to see you. But of course, you were hanging out with the trust fund babies and trophy wives inside the actual debate. And I know there were others of you who are totally normal, like you and my friend Bridget Melson and many others. But tell me what it was like inside the debate? What was the atmosphere? What was? Give us the inside scoop.
Well, first, I was just very fortunate to get a ticket, and I had never been to a debate before or sat within the halls of a debate. I did go to the Democrat debate, but again, I was just interviewing people outside of the debate because that actually was more entertaining than the folks that took the debate to the Democrat debate that night. Yes. A lot of food for fodder came off of that and a lot of laughs. But yeah, I was fortunate enough to sit inside, and I was late because I was actually on the Andy Caldwell show yesterday, and managed to get there too late, and they gave away my seat, but I was a seat filler, and I was a seat filler right next to Michael Steele. And so that was interesting. Never met him before, chatted with him briefly, and we both kind of nodded our heads at the same time and looked at each other in disbelief when Jeb Bush went on the attack against Trump, and then was pretty hypocritical in his statement by saying you can't insult your way to the top or to the presidency when he was lobbing insults at Donald Trump, and quite unprovoked. It was provoked, however, by the CNN moderators. I was not surprised
let me stop
by
you.
that.
Let me stop you for a minute, because you had Donald Trump was actually booed at one point, and Jeb Bush was getting cheers. I mean, I don't know if it's the 1% or his supporters are all 1%ers, and maybe there's enough of them that add up to 3% of the population. But out in the cheap seats, even in Miami, even in Florida, the debate watching parties, the official ones for the Jeb Bush campaign, were empty. There's no one that seems to like this guy, but this little group that you were hanging out with was cheering him. Am I getting that wrong?
Well, the group was very mixed, but yes, there were a lot of cheers for Jeb Bush, more than I expected, because of how he's polling. Someone that's polling in the single digits, you wouldn't expect that many people really to be represented in the audience.
Not only how he's polling. Have you ever met a single person that is supporting Jeb Bush? Because I haven't.
No, I haven't. I have not. And I know quite a few people. But no, I have not. So yeah, I was surprised by the hoots and hollers, just simply because, I didn't really talk to anybody after the debate either that was supporting Bush. I didn't see any Bush signs, outward displays except for the hoots and hollers.
Yeah, but everywhere I go, people are talking about Trump in a big way. I mean, he's the guy who's breaking through. We had a caller on the show yesterday who said she is a former Democrat. She left the Democrat Party to become a Republican because of Donald Trump. And it was funny because I asked her about some other candidates, and she said, well, why would I want to support anyone who is following the parade when I could support the parade leader? And I thought she made a great point. But the establishment, the powers that be within the GOP, many of whom were sitting in that room, or certainly their funders, their donors, they would rather have anybody except Donald Trump, Senator Ted Cruz, or Ben Carson. I mean, and there was a crazy moment too in the debate when Ben Carson was just attacked by Hugh Hewitt, the moderator who is a radio host on Salem Broadcasting.
Yeah, and I literally was taken aback by that exchange, and I gasped out loud. And I was part of the crowd that was booing Hugh Hewitt. And there were a lot of boos. When the boos are coming towards the moderators, obviously something is wrong. But to basically compare Ben Carson to not caring, rather, or to label Ben Carson as an uncaring individual who will simply just wipe out thousands of helpless women and children. And he alluded in a similar ruthless tactic as Churchill or something to that effect. And I thought, wow, well, that was a double whammy. We not only threw Ben Carson, pediatric neurosurgeon candidate for president, under the bus, conservative, stalwart conservative, we are now throwing Churchill under the bus.
Yeah.
I know.
They're defending Neville Chamberlain.
With Hugh.
They want Neville Chamberlain, and And any booze for Hugh Hewitt, I'm totally happy with. That guy is bad news because he always seems to support candidates that are Democrats or extremely liberal and leftist leaning while pretending to be a Republican. But I don't know. Maybe that's what you have to be a successful, popular radio host. I don't know. But we're still here, and we just speak the truth on this show. And here's the thing. Here's where I was a little disappointed in Ben Carson. The guy's a neurosurgeon. He's got a tremendous amount of courage, even though he sort of plays it off as being a very laid-back kind of guy. I felt like he really needed to go after Hugh Hewitt. I felt like he needed to say, hey, look, nobody would ever want to have to push that button. I wouldn't want to have to take one human life, let alone have to, be pushing a button to drop a bomb. But I would do it to protect American lives, and I would do it in a way where we would protect and try to prevent as much collateral damage as possible. I mean, he could have pushed back. He could have said, "War is hell." This is. But your question is despicable. It's as if you're accusing me of a wannabe mass murderer.
Yeah, and it's his inability or lack of will, or perhaps he doesn't want to tangle with Hugh as he doesn't want to tangle with Trump and others on that stage. You see that in his poll numbers. You see him dropping, and I think that specifically when Obama came out after the San Bernardino terrorist attack and gave a speech from the podium at the Oval Office, no one walked away from that speech feeling any safer. As a matter of fact, there was an increase in the polls. When you looked at it, 76% of the American people believe that we'll have another terrorist attack. They're frightened about going shopping this Christmas season for these soft target attacks. And he doubles down on gun control and talks about gun violence. And who fills that leadership vacuum that was left after that speech? The very first person that came out was Donald Trump and said, this is what we're going to do about Muslim immigration. And so you see Trump rise, but Carson has been pretty silent, and he, is the good doctor. He's obviously extraordinarily intelligent, and he's a diagnostician. But yet there is there is, I don't know if it's a trust issue, if people really feel as though they can entrust him with our foreign policy, our national security. His temperament seems to be one that the people on the left should like, because everyone's questioning everyone else's temperament, including Trump's. So,
well, sure.
You can't really give the left what they want.
I don't know if it's a trust issue as much as it is simply a connection. Trump knows how to connect with people. Cruz is starting to learn how to know how to connect with people. He's struggled with that, but he's doing a lot better in the past couple of debates. He had some great moments. Even used humor and is coming off as much more natural and fluid. Carson just hasn't mastered that, and part of what happens. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. And when you see kind of candidates falling off, you just have to be reminded. And you were a candidate yourself, as I was for a central committee. But when it comes to a national level and some local politics as well, people will ultimately vote for who they can trust. And this election is going to be that's when you look at the statistics. They might make that decision right when they get to the poll, but it will come down to both men and women will pull the lever for a leader who they can trust.
If you're just tuning in, we're talking with Megan Barth. She is a nationally recognized political commentator. She has a great website, ReaganBaby.com. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, I'd love to. I've got a caller on hold. Love to take a question, and then I've got a question for you about after parties. Coming right back. Hey, welcome back to the show. We're talking with political commentator Megan Barth. She was in the debate, live and in person. And we're going to bring on a caller here real quick with a question. Hey, give me your first name and city, please, and then what's your question?
Devin from Long Beach.
Great.
Devin from Long Beach. Can you hear me?
Yes, and what is your question?
Well, I guess I wonder, why do you suppose, Rand and Ted didn't talk more about the NDAA when and the issue of why we shouldn't be putting American citizens on a list where they can't have due process and get indefinitely detained? And two is, why didn't Ted, or Rand elaborate more on the fact that we've had these NSA spying tactics in place and terror attacks still happen? So just why didn't people call?
Well, let me stop you there. And Devin, I think it's a good question. Let me throw it to Megan first. Megan, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first I have to say that the foreign policy disagreement and debate specifically between Rubio, Cruz, and Paul was the most excellent portion of the debate, and those philosophies needed to be exchanged and identified and differentiated. So I thought that that was they put Rubio on the defense, and when they compare Rubio to Chuck Schumer, that's not a winner for Rubio, and he's going to have
that's
to.
A genius. That's
Pardon?
Genius. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm saying that was genius.
Yeah.
Hey, Devin, thanks for the call. And I'm just going to give you my take, which is I did think that Ted Cruz, I heard, and I was not, I tend to move around a lot. I don't like to sit and just watch something. And so I was running around shooting videos and tweeting and Facebooking and doing all kinds of things in the press room and talking to people and not just glued to it. But what stuck with me, Ted Cruz did make an epic comment about it. But it was more in passing. It wasn't deep policy stuff, but it was something that the average person would pick up because it was correctly and well tied in. But here's where I'd like to ask your opinion. You've heard I sent you the clip of the simple question I asked Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is a big boy. This is a guy that knows and understands business, complex deals, and everything else. I don't think he is, unless he's just putting on a face, I don't know that he is prepared to deal with the GOP elite machine who you went to some after parties. I mean, they're coming for him, and you found out from some unnamed source what their dream ticket is.
Yeah, well, for a while now, even prior to the debate, I had been listening, and a couple people have talked in my ear that have strong establishment ties within California and D.C. that basically their trial balloon is floating Rubio and Kasich as a ticket. And I laughed.
John Kasich has to be the most hated man in America. I mean, you got to be kidding me.
I started laughing so hard, and I said, are you kidding me? The GOP honestly thinks that people are going to turn out in droves over that type of ticket. They are underestimating their voting public. Especially
why do they want to take out
someone like Trump?
Why do they want to take out Trump when Trump's bringing Democrats into the party and young people and all kinds of people that wouldn't identify as Republican?
Well, one part of the debate, which I thought, geez, does anyone see a dead horse lying around that's being beat to death, is, again, when Trump was challenged, do you have this allegiance to the GOP? And, of course, he comes back and defends himself and explains himself again that he has no interest in running third party. But what the GOP is not doing is asking that question of themselves. Will they support Trump should he get the delegates and become our nominee? And we already have people. Correct. He signed a document stating that he would not run third party. They should sign a document that says they'll support the GOP nominee. But Tom DeLay comes out just a couple days ago, I noticed, and Lindsey Graham and a few others that say they'll absolutely not, they could not bring themselves to vote for Donald Trump should he be the nominee. And I heard that, and I said, you have got to be kidding me. I had to hold my nose for McCain. I had to hold my nose for Bob Dole.
Wow.
And you can't hold your nose this one time.
But see, it's never
people, and I spoke to.
It's never a two-way street, Megan. It's never a two-way street with them.
Well, there is going to have to be some give and take, and perhaps this is, the perfect storm for them to start paying attention. Because when you insult Donald Trump, you are insulting 41% of the voters that are backing him right now. And if you want to paint Donald Trump as a progressive, as a person who is not conservative, well, then start challenging him on those issues. You can't have Jeb Bush as your ringleader out in the front saying, you can't insult your way to the top. You're not going to win the presidency. You're not going to get the nomination. He's not talking about.
We're going to have to leave it there. Megan Barth, thank you for coming on today on the Tim Donnelly Show.
Thank you so much.
You got it. We've got Rick Santorum, presidential candidate, coming up right after the break. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. We have a special guest that we're about to bring on air. You may hear us dialing. It's just technological stuff we have to do with our system. But look, there was one man who stood out in the first debate yesterday, and that was Senator Rick Santorum. And wait till you hear what he said. We're going to play a clip after we get him on the line here of an epic moment that really set the tone for the entire night in both debates. This is a man who needs very little introduction if you followed the presidential campaign in 2012, because he's the one who won the Iowa caucus, the one that right now Ted Cruz is leading, and he built a grassroots army that conquered ultimately 11 states before he exited the race. And while we're waiting to get him on the line, we're just having a little issue with the number. If you would play the clip of him that we have in the queue, let's go ahead and roll that while I'm working on this.
But what Donald Trump was saying was nothing against Muslims. His comment was against this administration, who doesn't have a policy to properly vet people coming into this country. Let's just be honest about what's being talked about here. And I know people will pile on because it makes sense to pile on, maybe from the polls. But he brings up a legitimate issue. The fact of the matter is, not all Muslims are jihadists, and no one, including, I suspect, Donald Trump, would say that. But the reality is, all jihadists are Muslims. That's a reality. And we have to stop worrying about offending some people and start defending all Americans, because we're not right now.
There's such clarity in that. And when he said that, it transformed the debates for the entire evening. It set the tone, and it really put the moderators on notice that you're not dealing with the same group of GOP candidates that you were 2 months ago or even a month ago. Everything has changed. And I was really impressed with the command that Senator Rick Santorum had of the issues and his own experience and ability to speak firsthand. Because a lot of the candidates, they talk about things they don't know anything about. And it doesn't ring true. They sound like they're guessing. And I have to say that in the case of Senator Rick Santorum, he was doing anything but, and it was an epic performance. We're gonna take a quick break here while we working out this telephone glitch, and then we'll come back, hopefully with Senator Rick Santorum on the line. Hey, welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. I am your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in the state of California. And we have Senator Rick Santorum here on the line. Senator.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing fantastic. We have become huge fans listening to you yesterday. You set the tone for the entire two debates when you came out with your epic comments about the fact that all jihadists are Muslims.
Yeah, I said not all Muslims are jihadists, but the fact is all jihadists are indeed Muslims. And this is a incontrovertible fact that we cannot ignore when understanding when you're fighting against the global jihad movement, you're fighting against those who identify with the Muslim faith and have their jihadism grounded in a 7th century version of Islam. And that's the unfortunate reality of what we're dealing with.
And would you agree, we've heard it, a number of people say it, including, I believe last night, Senator Ted Cruz was pretty eloquent on it, that political correctness is much more dangerous than a loaded gun. I mean, political correctness is killing people because we can't speak the truth about the nature of this evil, as you have described, coming out of 7th century Islamic fundamentalism.
I would absolutely agree with that. But it's not just political correctness. It's understanding the enemy. So it's not just identifying the enemy, but having really studied them. I mean, we used to, in the days of the Cold War, we would have classes. They would have classes within the military, doctrine that would study the enemy and understand its ideology, understand its inclinations, motivations, that the ideology that they ascribe to would lead them to project on the battlefield. That was a very important part. Getting in the head. I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, if you talk to Tom Brady, you want to get in the head of the defense and understand, what the defensive coordinators try to do. And the same thing, you're trying to get in the quarterback's head and what his progressions are and what he's thinking. That's the same thing when it comes to fighting an enemy. And when you completely ignore the quarterback and say, well, it really doesn't matter what the quarterback does or what he's thinking, then you realize you're feckless in defending against it because you have no idea what's coming. Because again, you don't understand the nature of the enemy. So it's not just understanding that the jihadists are the people we're fighting, and it's the 7th century version of Islam, but it's also playing that out and saying, okay, the fact that for example, a caliphate is legitimate in the eyes of these radical Muslims, these 7th century Muslims, because it is the governing, it's the authority within the Sunni Muslim faith, and that one way to delegitimize that caliphate is to, in fact, take their land, show that they're not being successful. They don't have territorial integrity. They're not expanding their land. They're not winning. That is a very important thing to understand, that taking the land within a caliphate is a signal to the Islamic world that this isn't the real caliphate. Now, if you don't walk through, not just identify the enemy, but understand how they attract people, what they're using to sell their caliphate as legitimate, then you're going to have policies that are going to be, well, what this president is, contain ISIS. Well, contain ISIS is music to ISIS ears, because then they don't have to seriously worry about losing that land.
Yeah, that's a great point. And when I was listening to you in the earlier debate, you brought such not just information but understanding to it that was real world. And for the life of me, and I know that there are thousands and thousands of Americans who cannot understand why you are not on the main stage and John Kasich is not back in Ohio where he belongs, because this is literally the issue of our time, and we need to be having this serious discussion whether it offends people or not.
Yeah, it's one of the comments I said. We have to stop worrying about offending some and start defending everybody.
And start protecting Americans, you said. We just played it exactly. When we were having a little trouble getting you on air. We played your clip, and it was... No, don't worry about that. That's life. But your comments were epic because you put it into perspective. And look, right now, the people that are talking this way are you've got Senator Ted Cruz, you've got Donald Trump. What? Talk to us a little bit, because you've been through this.
I will say that let me try to, not that I'm making a campaign pitch here, but let me try to differentiate myself from both of them.
Please do.
Really, the important thing is to understand that, again, you have to agree. I think Trump and Cruz are very good on saying, look, we have to be honest to who the enemy is. But then you have to, as I said before, you have to sort of follow through, and there has to be real policies that can actually accomplish what you want to accomplish, which is to defeat this enemy. And I think that's where, candidly, they both fall a little bit short. And I would go and say, for example, Donald Trump's idea of banning all Muslims coming into this country. I think, again, he brings up a very legitimate point that we need to look at Muslim immigration, and we need to look at areas where Muslims come from where we simply do not have good information, and there's a high presence of terrorist activity in those countries, which would be predominantly the Middle East and the areas where Salafi Islam is highly practiced. But those are areas that I think we should call a halt right now, because we don't have a way of doing legitimate background checks. So banning all Muslims, I think, is a PR disaster for us in the Islamic world, who we are going to have to engage to help us to defeat the enemy within, the cancer within Islam. So I think, again, Trump brings up a legitimate point, has a bad prescription for how to solve that problem. Cruz, same thing. Legitimate point. We have to defeat ISIS, but he's not willing to do anything really to defeat ISIS. Calling for carpet bombing, it just has me harken back to Dresden in World War II. No one carpet bombs anymore. No one just levels cities anymore. The American public wouldn't stand for it. I wouldn't stand for it. I mean,
okay,
what we need to do is we need to have.
That's what I want. Give me the Rick Santorum prescription.
Yeah, the prescription is twofold. Number one, we do need an air campaign that's much more robust than we have now, but we have to work in concert to take back the land. And the land we have to take back initially is Iraqi land for several reasons. Number one, we owe it to the Iraqi people. We owe it to the Sunnis that we worked with in the Anbar Awakening and drove out al-Qaeda in Iraq, and then we abandoned them under Barack Obama. And all the people that we said we would stand with you and we would throw out these terrorists and we would stand with you to preserve your homeland here, this Sunni homeland within Iraq. And we walked away from them. And then ISIS came and killed their families, killed them, drove them out. And now we're saying, hey, give us another chance. And that's a very big ask for folks. But it's something we have an obligation to do, not just for them, because national security is our security, not promises we made to others. But it is important for us to keep our promises in the world. And number two, if we can drive ISIS out of Iraq, we accomplish what is absolutely necessary, which is to take a major portion of their land. And a combination of working with Sunni Arabs in Iraq and the Kurds, the Peshmerga, up in the Kurdish areas, we can take back a substantial portion of the land from the caliphate. I believe that will delegitimize the caliphate, delegitimize ISIS in the world, in the Islamic world, and go to a long way to collapsing them. I am concerned, and by the way, Ted Cruz doesn't want to put boots on the ground. Ted Cruz wants to use just a bombing campaign. It will not work. There's no way that we will take land back, particularly the areas, the Sunni, Iraqi Sunni areas, without having American troops in with Iraqis, in with Kurds, to be able to accomplish that. The area where I somewhat agree with Ted Cruz is I don't believe we should be involved in taking back a lot of land in Syria, in part because of understanding what ISIS is about. ISIS is an apocalyptic caliphate. They believe in bringing about the conquering of the world for Islam and the end of times. And they have this scenario of this town in Syria that, according to their eschatology, their end of times theology, that they lure the infidels, they lure the Christian infidels into this city, and that triggers the apocalypse. So you say, well, that's just craziness. Well, it may be craziness any more than the caliphate, you may say, is craziness. But the reality is we don't want to give them fodder to be able to recruit. So we have to be very careful about understanding what the enemy is about, understanding how we defeat them, and don't cross tripwires that give them the ability to be able to say we're the real deal.
See, that level of understanding is missing. I didn't hear a whole lot of that in the later debate, Rick, and you were bringing it forth in the earlier debate. So I got to talk a little bit of politics with you, because you've been through this, and I think you're being massively underestimated. You won the Iowa caucus. You won 11 states with a grassroots army. And what are they telling you as criteria for why they haven't pulled you up into the main stage since things have kind of shuffled around a little bit?
National polls. I mean, that other than this debate, they did look at a couple of the state polls, Iowa and New Hampshire, but the reality is they used national polls from the very beginning, and particularly with Trump involved in the fray, it's been very difficult to get any kind of airtime. That's been the real difference between 4 years ago and now. I was at the bottom of the heap 4 years ago, but people had the opportunity to see me on the stage with everybody else, and people had the opportunity to say, you know what, this guy actually makes more sense than these folks who are ahead of him. But to see me on the same stage, now you're sort of seen as, well, you're just sort of the kids' table, the pre-debate. Most 95% of the news coverage doesn't even talk about the first debate. And the injustice of that, and again, I'm not speaking to me, I think the injustice generally to that is that we have seen that people in the bottom third of the rankings often do rise up once they're given a chance, and it's about fair exposure that they have the opportunity to rise. Well, that's being denied a lot of folks down in the kids table where I am right now. I think I overcome that. I overcame part of that 4 years ago by just a lot of hard work in Iowa and trusting the people of Iowa that when it gets to be when silly season is over and serious time comes up, I remind everybody that last time around 70% of Iowans, almost 75% of Iowans, didn't make their decision until the last month, and 50% didn't make them to the last week.
And that's an extraordinary fact. Look, we're talking with Senator Rick Santorum, running for president. Senator, I know we promised to let you go at the bottom of the hour. Is there any chance you could give us a little more time? Because I
owe you a few minutes on the front end, so I'll make it up on the back end.
I would love, because we're gonna hit a break here in a minute, and I would love to get a little bit more in depth and find out a little bit more about you and your policies when we come back from this break. We will have more with Senator Rick Santorum. You will not want to miss it. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the show. We've got a special guest on the line, Rick Santorum, Senator Rick Santorum, running for president. You can find out a lot more about him at ricksantorum.com. He's got some great ideas on this website. You got to check it out. Great family man, social conservative, stands up for his principles, doesn't care about whether or not he is popular. He cares about whether or not he is true. Rick, I got to ask you, you've got this 2020 flat tax plan on your website. I've heard you talk a lot about terrorism. I've heard you talk a lot about a number of different issues. I've never really heard from you personally your economic plan, and that's, after terrorism, it's got to be the biggest issue to most Americans.
Well, before the events of Paris and San Bernardino, it was probably the most important issue on people's mind. I still think it's a very important issue, and pocketbook issues always are critical in a general election against a Democrat whose vision is always to pay people for votes in some way or another. To give things from the government in order to secure votes. So Republicans have to be smarter in going out and addressing the real concerns of working Americans who are feeling like there's really no hope and opportunity there for them to be able to get good paying jobs and see their wages rise and see their quality of life do better. And I think the biggest problem is that Republicans tend to talk to small business people and business folks, corporations. And I remind my Republican friends all the time that of all workers in America, if everybody goes to work every day, 90% don't run a business. 90% work for someone who runs a business. And,
good point.
And that's and we don't talk to them very well. We don't have a real vision as to how we're going to make life better for the 74% of Americans, for example, who are aged 25 to 65, who don't have a college degree. And the reality is that under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, the quality of life for those 74%, those 90% workers, has gone down. You've seen the good-paying jobs get driven offshore by horrible tax and regulatory policy of this administration. That's why I announced from a factory floor in western Pennsylvania. I said the president has lost about 2 to 3 million factory jobs. He's driving more off. We're driving corporations out of this country because of our high tax rate and our hostility toward anybody who makes anything, produces anything, mines anything. All of those things are now taboo in America, and as a result of that, we see the effects. Working people get hurt. Because when GE loses, gets driven offshore, GE's still making the money. They're just making the product somewhere else. GE's still making the money.
Let me talk to you.
Worker.
Let me talk to you about that for a minute, because I spent 20 years in manufacturing, and I don't think that most Americans, unless they worked in manufacturing at one time or had a family member who did, really understand it was the building block of a solid economy. And also the other things you said, mining and manufacturing, construction, whatever. If you take raw materials, and turn them into something of value, whatever that process is, that creates an economic
wealth.
It creates wealth. It creates opportunity and jobs, and it's the building blocks of an economy, isn't it?
It has a huge multiplier effect, because of all the related suppliers and distributors and everything that goes on. And so there's no question that if we're going to be successful in rebuilding the heart of America, the middle of America, we need a tax policy, we need a regulatory policy, we need a trade policy, and we need an immigration policy, all of which supports the American worker. And that's been the hallmark of my campaign. I wrote a book for you last year called Blue Collar Conservative, Recommitting to an America That Works. And the whole idea was we need to have a tax structure that levels the playing field for us so we can compete internationally again on a tax basis, that we can compete on a regulatory basis, that we can compete on a tariff trade basis. All of those things are things really that hamper our manufacturers from being successful. And we've got two big advantages going for us right now. Number one is our energy prices. We have the cheapest energy in the world right now. We're the number one producer of energy in the world. We have the cheapest natural gas prices. We have an abundance of oil. This is a great advantage for America right now. Secondly, is China, and China demographic problem. China's wages are going up. Why? Because they had a one-child policy, so they don't have as many workers coming in to replace all of these couples that only had one kid, who are now the baby boom generation that's retiring, just like they're retiring here in the United States of America. So Chinese wages are going up. So that wage differential has been neutralized somewhat. So we've got we've got all sorts of other advantages of doing business in America, proximity to market, obviously, but also just the rule of law and not having your intellectual property stolen. There's a lot of advantage, but we don't talk about it. We don't drive toward it. We don't talk to our students about the importance of, not every kid wants to go to college or needs to go to college. A lot of kids should really stop and think, if you don't know what to do, go get a job, make some money, go to school part-time for a while. Don't burden yourself with these huge debts and expect that debt's going to pay off. You've got plenty of time. If you reach 20 years of age, I think your life expectancy is like 85 to 90. So you've got a long time to figure this all out.
Start a business, right? I mean, Under a Rick Santorum, under a Rick Santorum presidency. Yeah. Under your kind of a plan, you want to knock these regulations out of the way, scrap the tax code, unleash economic growth is what you put on there. But also I like the way you talk about doing a trade, because it's as if somehow the elite establishment and the the education establishment has made it a dirty word to actually go out and work for a living with your hands instead of going off and getting a college degree.
We have 250,000 welder jobs open in America today. 250,000, range anywhere from around $40,000 a year at starting level to, if you want to weld pipelines around the country, for example, you can make $100,000 to $150,000 a year. There are plenty of jobs out there for people who want to use their hand. I go to manufacturers every week, 2-3 times a week. The most constant thing I hear is, we need people who are willing to show up and go to work. We'll train them. They don't have to have a college degree. If they will show up and work on time, and they're willing to work and they're willing to get their training, we'll train them on CNC machines. We'll train them to be welders. We'll train them to be on all the different jobs that are available now that are, in many cases, automated, but you need people to run machines still. You need people to be able to ship and pack and do the other things that are necessary.
Absolutely. Would a Rick Santorum presidency include approving the Keystone Pipeline?
Absolutely. Day one, we would be calling the Canadian Prime Minister and just say, we're ready to roll. Let's get this thing going. You talk about construction jobs, you talk about energy, you talk about unlocking. Unfortunately, the big problem in the Bakken right now up in North Dakota is they can't get their oil to market. It's just too expensive. We can do a lot to revitalize our economy with this important pipeline.
Hey, Senator, would you be willing to take a question from a caller?
Sure.
We've got John in North Carolina has been waiting patiently. John, you're on with Senator Santorum. Go.
Good evening to both of you. As a resident of North Carolina, former Western Pennsylvania
good man.
resident, and yes, and I hope you do well. My daughter adores you, loves you.
Oh, well, thank you. I assume you're a Steeler fan if you lived in Western Pennsylvania.
Oh, my, yeah. As a matter of fact, the whole crew just moved back to the Cranberry area.
Okay, good.
You better be careful about rooting for. He's a New England fan. I said you better.
That's a very dangerous occupation. There,
you're in Steeler country now.
Absolutely.
But, I don't really have a question, but I mean you were hit dead on. And my mother kind of made me go to college, so I kind of have the best of all the worlds. I have a trade. I'm an electrician. I'm in the water wastewater business. I have a degree in industrial engineering. But when you live on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, you have to do what pays the best, and that's what I do. But you are hitting it spot on, and I think there's a lot of people. You're way underestimated. I've heard you several times on different talk shows, and you're just an eloquent speaker. You do very well. I wish you the best. And Merry Christmas to both of you.
Well, thank you.
I just want to chime in and tell you, I don't know why people don't get it. There's a whole group of you that are excellent, and there's some that, and Tim knows who I'm kind of against too, I guess. But you're hitting the nail on the head. It's not hard. I don't know why there's so much resistance. I've asked Tim how many times, Tim, 4 or 5 times. What makes them tick? I just can't figure them out. I don't know why they're like intentionally screwing us right into the ground. And don't forget about coal either. There's going to be a lot of coal operaters here.
Well, you're talking, you're talking to a guy whose grandfather was a coal miner, and yes. I believe my congressional district had some coal in it, and certainly I represented the state of Pennsylvania for 2 terms, and I'm a big believer in coal and as a proper use for bulk energy production. We have enormous resources in this country that we can keep our power rates down and still do it cleanly. We can still do it to protect the ecology as well as to promote the economy. And so I have 7 kids. I don't want a dirty environment, but I don't want a country that's not going to provide for a quality of life that's better than the quality of life that we have today. That every generation should work to make it at least as good, if not better, for the next. And we're at a point right now where that is really in question, and it's because of government policy. It's not the American public that's the problem. It's not the people that's the problem. It's the policies that create all the wrong incentives, disincentives to work, disincentives to invest, disincentives to save and to create wealth. That has to stop. And our plan that was mentioned earlier, our 2020 tax plan, is a 20% flat rate tax, 20% on individuals, 20% on corporations, 20% on capital gains. We're not going to favor one group of people over another, depending on how you get your income. Everybody's going to pay the same rate, and we're going to make sure that we're going to help hardworking people and families to make sure that if you're trying to climb the economic ladder, we're not going to have big tax rates hit you. So that 20% rate's for everybody, but every person in America gets a $2,750 tax credit. That means for a family of four who's making $60,000 a year, you get an $11,000 tax credit. Your taxes at 20%, $60,000 is your income, and 20% your tax. Your taxes are $12,000, so your net tax would be $1,000. So that just gives you an idea of the kind of, and by the way, probably less than that because we have a charitable deduction and a home interest deduction. So if you own a home and you contribute to charities, you may not have any taxes at all, and that's pretty good. And we think we're going to create real incentives for helping families and to get people back to work. So no matter what level of income, the most the federal government's going to take from you is 20%.
Senator Rick Santorum, your economic plan sounds outstanding. You got me all excited now, and I had to let John go because we are up against it on time now, and I'm so grateful for you coming on. Look, we're going to pull together a coalition, and we're going to trade Jeb Bush and John Kasich for one Rick Santorum. We want you on the main stage, my friend, and keep fighting the good fight.
When you get those poll questions, make sure you answer my name, and I'll tell you what else you can do. You can go to ricksantorum.com. If you like what you hear, give us a shout-out. I mean, sign up, help us out. If you can send us even a small contribution. We're not a big, high-budget campaign. We don't have $100 million. We run lean and mean, and so every dollar really will help us, and we'd appreciate that support.
And I echo that. Definitely, you need money, even in a grassroots campaign. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank my good friend, Dr. Bridget Melson, our mutual friend, for hooking us together. So,
absolutely, she's the best. Thank you.
She is. Thank you for what you're doing, and keep fighting. Don't give up, because when I hear you, I'm hearing things I'm not hearing anywhere else. And my prayer right now is that you get more of this coverage, and we get back to some of these conservative, blue-collar conservative values. Just really excited.
Well,
Rick Santorum.
I just go to that website and help us out. Join our team, and that'll get us going. I appreciate it.
You got it.
Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas to you, Senator. Hey, we've got to take a break. We'll take your calls when we get back. That was Senator Rick Santorum. Go to ricksantorum.com. You know what? Write him a check. Send him a donation, even if all you can send him is $20. This is a guy who is fighting for you. I don't need to tell you that. You heard him. Hey, welcome back to the show. How do you follow a guy like that? You know what Rick Santorum reminds me of? He is rock solid blue collar. That is what that man is, and that's the backbone of America. And I'm so tired of having to settle for phonies and fakes like John Kasich, who is nothing more than a Democrat pretending to be a Republican. He is. I want to use a bunch of big words to insult him, but you know what? I'm not. I'm just going to skip it. I just want to trade. I want to trade up. I want Rick Santorum on that main stage, and you know what? You can do something about that. Go to his website, ricksantorum.com. Support him. Volunteer, donate, whatever it is. If he motivates you, if he gets you excited, that's a man that is working hard. And I love it when a candidate asks for money, because if they aren't asking for money, they're not going to have any chance of getting anywhere and having any impact at all, let alone win. I'm going to go to the phones. We've got Mike in Wrightwood. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, watching that debate last night, I think it got more irritating than anything else, because these guys are just never going to learn that they're on the same side and going at each other, and having these little stupid arguments. It's just helping the other side laugh their ass off. And sorry about that, but it's getting to be unreal. I mean, Trump, all he needs to do is talk about how he's going to be strong. He doesn't need to make faces. He doesn't need to go after Jeb Bush and remind him that, I do think it's kind of funny how he said, yeah, you were right next to me at one point. Now you're almost off the stage. But, I think that Bush asked for it. And
Bush needed to be put in his place. And when Trump, here's the thing, Mike, that you come from the theater of war. I come from the theater of politics. And I'm going to tell you right now that politics is war. It's a different kind of war. They're not shooting at you for the most part. But what they are doing is the very people that you think should support you, should help you, the more they ingratiate themselves and get inside and find out everything that's going on, they use it to destroy you. If you're a threat to their power and to their little fiefdom. And Trump is going to he has to fight. It isn't a matter of him, having the luxury of just sort of avoiding it. If you noticed at the beginning of the first debate, the Undercard debate, every single candidate pretty much went after Trump. So, the man's got to defend himself.
Yeah, Trump needs to start making sure that when CNN starts asking questions, they start asking CNN questions like, why didn't you go after Carter when he said Iranians couldn't come here? Or why was it okay when he shut down the border, but it's not okay?
Good. It's a good point. Mike, we got to let you go. Great hour here on the Radio Free California Network, and more still to come. You have found your way to the Radio Free California Network. I am Tim Donnelly, your host, former California State Assemblyman and radio governor here in California. Yes, I am back in California, left Las Vegas this morning, and man, what a world of difference. When I got to agree with Senator Rick Santorum, when you get to hear somebody and they're not filtered and they're not put in the undercard. That guy does not belong in the undercard. I got to tell you. John Kasich does. He's just annoying. I can't stand him. Have I said enough about the governor from Ohio? Probably. But I would trade him and Jeb Bush for Rick Santorum in a heartbeat. And you know what? If the polls rise, then he could be on the next debate, which I believe is mid-January. And I'm pretty sure there's one in New Hampshire, which is something like the day before, the night before the actual primary takes place. So that's going to be pretty significant, especially since by then we will have results from Iowa, and then New Hampshire will be next. And look, anything can happen. And I certainly have to admit, the depth of the Republican bench, yes, I'm going to say something nice about the Republican Party for a change. And you know that whenever I talk about the GOP instead of Republicans, and I say the GOP, I mean the elitists, the so-called leadership at the top of the California Party and the National Party, who basically work overtime to undermine the values that most of the faithful Republican membership believe in. But the depth of the bench, to have a guy of this caliber, and you might not agree with him on everything. So what? On the serious stuff, on the important stuff, he gets it. He is one of the leading voices and one of the most knowledgeable on Islamic jihadism. There's no one else that was making the points he was making, and we didn't get to hear them in the main debate. So it was a much more hollow and shallow discussion than it could have been. And other than being Donald Trump's punching bag, Jeb Bush served no purpose. None whatsoever. And it really is sad that the GOP establishment, as Megan Barth alluded to earlier, they can't deal with the two-way street. They want you to swear allegiance to them, but they've already sworn allegiance to screw you over because they're owned by the moneyed interests who support them. And that's it. I call them the moneyed interests instead of the special interests because that word has sort of lost meaning. And it was certainly on display when they packed the House with Jeb Bush sycophants who obviously are huge donors to the RNC, that's the Republican National Committee, or the RGA, the Republican Governors Association. And, I've had my experience up close and personal with them. When I went and met with them, they said all kinds of nice things to my face and then turned around and just became massive supporters in the primary of my Democrat opponent who was pretending to be a Republican. And that is simply how the Republican Party works. And anybody who's been paying attention at all for the last decade gets it. And what have we got for all that? Where the GOP establishment, the elitists, always support the more liberal candidate. Always. They hated Ronald Reagan. We need to remember that. Even though they invoke him anytime they want to raise money or they want to raise troops, they want to raise grassroots, volunteers, they talk about Reagan with such respect. The man they hated because they couldn't control him. And see, who do they give us? John McCain? Bob Dole? And then Mitt Romney? It is so embarrassing when we have substantive leaders, people who are actual leaders, people who are knowledgeable and courageous. And I've been thinking about this. I believe that one of the things that we need to do right now is we need to pray for these individuals who have put themselves up, the ones who really get it, that they get the success that is necessary and the traction that is necessary to defeat those who don't, so that we actually get a leader who is an American, who is a principled leader, who understands the role of government and understands government is not supposed to control every aspect of your life. Government is not supposed to be the greatest obstacle to you starting a business. People don't even talk about starting businesses anymore. I mean, after Barack Hussein Obama said, you didn't build it because we built some roads, so therefore we built your business. Whatever. You didn't build FedEx. You didn't build Apple. You didn't build GE or Caterpillar or any of these businesses. As a matter of fact, I have some friends that own a business, and you may have bought the product, Scosche. That's manufactured by a conservative couple who are friends of mine. And you know what? I'm gonna get their website up here. As a matter of fact, I got their catalog right here, because that's who we should be supporting. People who support us. Their website's very simple. It's SCOSCHE. So SCOSCHE.com. And you know what they sell? They sell all the little devices that you need for an iPhone or any smartphone to make them. And they also sell some surfing products. Very cool company. But these are people who support conservatives. And we need to support people who support conservatives. And we need to pray. We need to spend some time in prayer, as well as working on the ground for people who get it. And one thing you're going to find on this show, you hear me talk a lot about Donald Trump. You hear me talk a lot about Senator Ted Cruz, not as much about Dr. Ben Carson. He's kind of fallen back in the pack. I can't stand Rubio, even though I think he's eloquent. I think it's fake. I just do. I don't buy it. And as a matter of fact, later on in the show, we're going to bring you a clip between Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio, and you're going to understand why. But Senator Rick Santorum definitely should be up in that mix. And there's something that is missing. And when I heard him talking, the passion with which he talked about blue collar, because I grew up in a blue collar neighborhood. The dads in the neighborhood that worked, because mostly it was dads back then, worked in the tool and die industry for the automobile companies or for their suppliers, including my own father. Now, he didn't work for someone else. He worked in his own business as a supplier to many of these companies. But that's one of the things that made America great, were blue-collar workers. They weren't just workers. They were people who gained knowledge many times with only a high school degree. They would go on the job and they would learn a trade. And it was an honorable trade. And they went through a process of apprenticeship and journeyman, and eventually became a master of their own trade and their own craft, so that they could then hand it down to their sons or their daughters or someone else who was up and coming. And now we're watching all of this go to foreign countries, and we're losing not just those initial jobs, we're losing the jobs, the lost opportunity, and the jobs that would have been created by having in place an actual building block, a foundation for our economy in something like manufacturing and mining. And by the way, I didn't want to interrupt Senator Santorum, but you remember earlier in the week, I played a clip from Jimmy Carter's malaise speech. What I didn't play for you, and it's much later on in the speech, I don't even know how I heard it because it was so hard to listen to. He talks about clean energy, and he talks about moving off of dependence on foreign oil. Jimmy Carter in 1979 is pushing coal in the name of green. Coal was green in 1979. It was green and clean, and it was the fuel of the future. Now, of course, it's natural gas, but coal still has a place because it's one of the fastest, highest, quickest fire-ups that you can do in terms of ramping up production to get electricity. I know we don't talk about that because everybody just assumes the electricity's there. Hey, solar ain't going to cut it. Wind is so unreliable, it's pathetic. And you've got to have that high ramp up, or you can't have manufacturing factories, and you can't weather blackouts and severe heat crises where there's a terrific amount of consumer demand. And then that knocks down your factories. And look, we got to get back to a time in this country where we say, look, building things and making things, and as Donald Trump puts it, making America great again by making America work. That's the key right there. I'm getting so fired up. I feel like I'm giving campaign speeches, and I'm not running for anything. Certainly not president. Hey, 323-746-TALK. We'll take your calls, and we got much more for you right after these messages. We took the show on the road. Had a great time in Las Vegas, by the way. Really, it's funny. It's a small clique, this little political world, and it was so strange because I walked in and I saw this just hundreds of seats in the press briefing room. And I've never been part of any of this. I've been the guy at the center of the being interviewed when I ran for office, and now I'm a guy who's covering things, and it was kind of funny. I went to ask a guy a question and introduced myself, and he says, "I know who you are," and that was kind of cool. He had covered me during the race, and bad on me that I didn't remember his name right off the bat, but I did remember him at some point. We had a great conversation. He was very helpful. And, as I said, it's a small clique. There's a lot of people that you meet, and it makes it fun. It makes it a lot of fun. I'm going to go to the phones here real quick, and then I want to bring you this amazing clip, this little tete-a-tete between Cruz and Rubio. Hey, you are live on air. Give me your first name and city, please.
Tim, this is Ike from Phelan, California.
Hi, Ike. How are you?
Wonderful. Tim, I heard on the news that Barry Santorum, the guy we call President Barack Obama, is supposed to be coming to California down here in San Bernardino.
Yeah,
do we really need to see his face down here in San Bernardino?
I've been trying to not talk about that today because I'm so infuriated. And you might remember that I was ranting about the fact he hadn't come here. Look, here's the thing. I'm going to put this in the context of a relationship like boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband, wife, okay? If you are merely dropping by, let's say your wife's work or your girlfriend, you're going to drop by her house to visit her, but you're only doing it on your way somewhere else, you don't get the points. Well, here you have people who have died because of the policies of Barack Hussein Obama, and he doesn't have the decency to come out here and show his face when the news media is trying to figure out what happened and why, and he doesn't want to answer for it. He doesn't want to be on the hot seat. He is literally dropping in. He might as well just parachute out of his plane and maybe tie a rope onto it, wave, and then get back up in the plane and go on to Honolulu where he's going to go golfing.
Absolutely. And if he does
this just ticks me off. I'm sorry, Ike. I'm just fired up. All right, you take it away. You get ticked off for me because I'm... You're not rhyming today, by the way.
Well, I've got some things prepared for you here, but I think we should have a huge show of protesters out there lining the streets with signs and banners. Now, I've got a sign already prepared.
Oh, I know you do.
Says.
Let me hear it.
Here's what my sign says. It says, "Impeach Obama on short notice. Turn the White House into a lighthouse."
Nice.
I would be right out there on that street. It's going to be Friday. I don't know what time. I'd like to find out what time.
But we don't know where. Have they said where he's going to be?
No, they haven't said. They said it's going to be in San Bernardino, but where, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, they haven't said that. And look, here...
I'm listening to get all the details.
Yeah,
but
see, he's supposed to be meeting privately with the families. Here's the one thing that I would caution, and I would say this only because these are our friends and neighbors, Ike, and that is we don't want to in any way besmirch the private meeting that those families deserve. When I was criticizing the president, I am happy that he is going to come and meet with some of them, and they need that. That could be the beginning of a healing moment, and the president plays a role in that. So if there is going to be protesting, I think it needs to be, when he lands and, somewhere away from wherever that venue is. But I don't think they're going to tell us where it is. Look, we're in a time of heightened security. We are definitely in a time of heightened security with this attack, and every day they're coming out with something new, and now they're saying there were no ties to terrorist organizations. You know what? That's even scarier and creepier, that these jihadists would just on their own decide to slaughter all these people.
Absolutely. But what I've got prepared here for you, I'll give you the statement, and then you can determine what the word is. The listeners can determine what the word is. Here it is. Minds under strict, legalistic, Islamic manipulation. Minds under strict, legalistic, Islamic manipulation. What is the word?
Say it again, because I'm writing here and I'm a little slow.
Minds under strict, legalistic, Islamic manipulation.
See, I missed the L. Muslim.
There it is. Minds under strict, legalistic, Islamic manipulation. Muslim. There it is.
Well, as always, you never disappoint, Ike. Thank you for the call. And we'll keep you informed. Whatever we hear on this whole thing about the president coming to San Bernardino, I hope it's because enough of us on talk radio and in the public have demanded that he actually do the right thing. It is late, but it's not too late. And it's insulting, just like it was when he went to Oregon, that he's only doing it in the context of a trip he already had planned. Anyway, that's... Why should we be surprised, though? After all, this is Barack Hussein Obama, or Barry Soetoro, as Ike likes to call him. 323-746-TALK. Got a great clip coming right up after this break.
And, one of the most troubling aspects of the Rubio-Schumer Gang of Eight bill was that it gave President Obama blanket authority to admit refugees, including Syrian refugees, without mandating any background checks whatsoever. Now, we've seen what happened in San Bernardino. When you're letting people in, when the FBI can't vet them, it puts American citizens at risk. And I tell you, if I'm elected president, we will secure the border. We will triple the Border Patrol. We will build a wall that works, and I'll get Donald Trump to pay for it.
I'll build it.
Dana.
Thank you. Senator Rubio, please.
Yeah, a couple points. In 2013, we had never faced a crisis like the Syrian refugee crisis now. Up until that point, a refugee meant someone fleeing oppression, fleeing communism, like it is in my community. As far as Ted's record, I'm always puzzled by his attack on this issue. Ted, you support legalizing people who are in this country illegally. Ted Cruz supported a 500% increase in the number of H-1B visas, the guest workers that are allowed into this country, and Ted supports doubling the number of green cards. So I think what's important for us to understand is there is a way forward on this issue that we can bring our country together on. And when I'm president, I will do it. And it will begin by bringing illegal immigration under control and proving it to the American people.
Dana.
Senator Cruz.
Look, I understand that Marco wants to raise confusion. It is not accurate what he just said, that I supported legalization. Indeed, I led the fight against his legalization and amnesty bill. And there was one commentator that put it this way, that for Marco to suggest our record's the same, it is like suggesting the fireman and the arsonist have the same record because they're both at the scene of the fire. He was fighting to grant amnesty and not to secure the border. I was fighting to secure the border. And this also goes to trust. Listen, on campaign trails, candidates all the time make promises. Marco said he learned that the American people didn't
Senator
trust
Cruz,
the federal
thank you.
government.
No, Dana,
he campaigned in Florida promising to lead the fight against amnesty.
Support legalizing
he
people that are in this
campaigned
country
promising
illegally.
to lead the fight against
Ladies
amnesty.
and gentlemen,
then
this
exactly
is why
that.
the American people are Senator Cruz, can you answer that question, please?
Does Ted Cruz rule out ever legalizing people that are in this country illegally now?
Senator Cruz?
I have never supported legalization.
Do you rule it out?
I have never supported legalization, and I do not intend to support legalization. And let me tell you how you do this. What you do is you enforce the law. What you do is you enforce the law.
Ms. Fiorina,
about this.
Ms. Fiorina, please wait your turn. We're going to get to you on this. Go ahead,
Sorry, you haven't gotten to me. This is
Senator
why
Cruz,
the nation is fed up with the political class.
You gotta love that. And look, kudos and major points to Senator Ted Cruz for fighting back, for having commanded the facts, for being calm and not getting ugly, but calling out Rubio on his record. And look, Cruz is not perfect. He is and has been in favor of all these HB1 visas, and that is an issue for American workers. We know that. But you know what? He has been largely consistent in his staunch opposition to illegal immigration, unlike Rubio. Rubio was one of the Gang of Eight that wanted to usher in one of the most draconian amnesties ever seen. No border security, just, hey, let's just legalize everybody. And look, that all sounds nice because, I get it. I understand. Maybe you're saying, hey, these are great people. They work hard. Come on, let's give them a break. Okay, well, that may be true about 80% of the people who are in this country illegally. Okay. What about the other 20%, number one? And then number two, then you've got an issue. So if it's 14 million, which is one of their favorite numbers, 11, 14, 20. Okay. Let's take 14 million. Let's take the middle number. Let's look back at history. President Ronald Reagan was told that there were 1 million illegals in the country when he signed the Simpson-Mazzoli Act and did the last amnesty 20 some odd years ago. 1 million. You know how many got it? 3.5. 3.5 million people got the amnesty. So 3.5 times the number that we thought were here. If those numbers, if that metric is true, you are now looking at a number that is much closer to 40 million. Not 11, not 14, not 20. But you're talking about the next amnesty being maybe as many, or even this amnesty being maybe as many as 40 million. Because it won't just encompass the people who are already here. And we don't know what that number is, but most experts that have any credibility believe it is between 30 and 40 million. So about 10% of our population. Let that sink in. Because once you start the amnesty process and you require certain documentation, then massive fraudulent document mills will spring up and begin propagating everywhere, not just MacArthur Park, but all over the country and all over California. And then how will you be able to sort out those who have a fraudulent utility bill and a fraudulent birth certificate? I mean, Mexico has no record of birth certificates. They have no database. There's nothing to check them against. So it's just a piece of paper. That's it. It is a piece of paper that signifies nothing. The FBI has major concerns about that because you can create a fraudulent identity that then becomes sort of legitimized once it gets mainstreamed here in the U.S. So given that terrorism is a very real threat on U.S. soil now, people get that now. How you intend to deal with illegal immigration, whether you intend to open up sort of a pathway for terrorists along with the pathway for the nice illegals. Sorry. I think most Americans don't want to take that risk. And we're not talking about sending people to concentration camps in trains, in cattle cars. We're talking about enforcing our laws and that people will have to go home for a period of time and they're going to have to get right with the immigration system and do it the right way. That's what we're talking about. They're not going to be sent off to die. They're going to be sent home to the countries that in many cases they love. I mean, everyone acts like it's the most draconian thing that ever happened on the planet Earth, when in fact, it is simply the consequence of coming into someone else's country illegally. You get deported. It's not a dirty word. Donald Trump is finally, at least you can give him nothing else. He's the one who said, look, we need to enforce our laws. You're either a country or you're not. And I know this horrifies the left, which provides me a great deal of entertainment and enjoyment, because irritating the left is something that I think should be done. They have done so much damage to this country, in particular, shutting down real debate, shutting down actual discussions that need to take place. We are going to take a quick break, and when we get back, final segment, the Tim Donnelly Show, coming right up. You know, one thing was abundantly clear in yesterday's debate, and that is, it didn't matter who you were. If you were a candidate other than Donald Trump, you were talking about Donald Trump, and that started in the first debate, what's called the Undercard Debate. And it should be the Undercard Debate when it's Lindsey Graham and George Pataki and some of the others, but not Rick Santorum. Rick Santorum did not belong there. John Kasich would be a perfect addition. And I think it's time for Jeb Bush to drop down there. He's doing so poorly in the polls. It's pathetic, except they're helping him to tread water. The establishment is, because they love him, just like he loves all the illegals coming across the border. But we've got this clip of Lindsey Graham apologizing for Donald Trump's stance on Islamic jihadism. You will not believe your ears.
This is a religious war between radical Islam and the rest of the world. And there's only one way you're going to win this war. Help people in Islam who reject radical Islam to fight over there and destroy this ideology. Donald Trump has done the one single thing you cannot do: declare war on Islam itself. ISIL would be dancing in the streets. They just don't believe in dancing. This is a coup for them. And to all of our Muslim friends throughout the world, like the King of Jordan and the President of Egypt, I am sorry he does not represent us. If I am president, we will work together. People in the faith through all over the world destroy this radical ideology. Declaring war on the religion only helps ISIL.
He sounds like Obama. I swear. He even uses the word ISIL instead of ISIS. It's pathetic, but that's Lindsey. Don't vote for me, Graham. Later, Donald Trump got booed and handled it rather well, which, let me tell you, if you've ever faced a tough crowd, a crowd that turns on you, that is not an easy thing to do. And it takes a certain amount of mastery and courage. Check it out.
What I like even better than that is getting our smartest and getting our best to infiltrate their internet so that we know exactly where they're going, exactly where they're going to be. I like that better. But we have to... Who would be... I just can't imagine somebody booing. These are people that want to kill us, folks. And you're objecting to us infiltrating their conversations? I don't think so. I don't think so.
Wow. I mean, look, what people like about him. I'm not going to say what I like about him, because as I have stated before on this show, I am not endorsing a candidate. I am on the sidelines. I am covering the race, and we will bring you everything that we know when we know it about candidates that we consider that are relevant, the ones that are really in the running, and occasionally an outlier like Rick Santorum, who is a very important voice in this entire debate. But wow, what people like about him is that's not easy to do. He turned that whole thing around, and what he's saying makes a lot of sense. And you know, it's interesting because he had so many of his colleagues actually agreeing with him while he was laying out some of his ideas. And, you know, when you can get your nearest competitor, in his case, right now, Senator Ted Cruz, to endorse some of your proposals, well, that takes some of the wind out of their sails. And by the way, I have to say, one of the things we discussed yesterday on air was this little fight going on between, or what looked like a skirmish breaking out between Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. You know, those guys handle it masterfully. They did not allow the CNN moderators to turn them against each other and play it out on national television. As a matter of fact, both of them deflected masterfully and then brought it around to points that they had intended to make. And I've got to hand it to both of them. We'll bring you some of the clips on that tomorrow. We've been sorting through a ton of clips, and there was some great action yesterday in the debate. I got to tell you, there's so much more that we'll discuss some of it tomorrow. We've also got some great guests coming up. Today we had Senator Rick Santorum. If you missed hearing his interview, man, there's a whole lot. You haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg with this guy. You need to go to Tim Donnelly's show, go to previous shows. It'll be up there sometime tomorrow, and you've got to check it out because he is an incredible individual. And by the way, just letting you know, we reached out to the Trump campaign, and we have their national spokesperson, who is Katrina Pearson. You might have seen her on Fox News. She is going to be coming on air with us on Monday, the 21st, and we will be entertaining your questions, and it will definitely be a show that you will not want to miss because, look, this guy could be the next president. We're working on also getting Senator Ted Cruz a little tougher. His people are in talks right now, so we're going to either get him or one of his spokespeople, because we intend to bring you and allow you to ask your questions or send them to us, and we'll ask them. You can always email us at tim@timdonnellyshow.com. And of course, we have Facebook, Twitter, email, and the all-important telephonic device that you are probably texting on as we speak. But there is this is one of those races where anything could change at any time. I mean, the dynamics, a month from now, we could have a different frontrunner. You never know. And the way Ted Cruz is climbing, and we haven't seen any real polls yet as to who won the debate. I know that Drudge has come out and put Donald Trump at 46%, and by most accounts, most people think Trump won it, or Trump or Cruz won it, or they're pretty close, or Cruz won it. Those are the only names that are being circulated, and there's a tremendous amount of agreement that it was actually Donald Trump who prevailed because A, he's in the lead, B, he really reined it in, and we brought you our soundbite, the clip that of my question to him, and we'll bring that again to you tomorrow. There's a humbler, kinder, gentler tone, a little more introspective, a little more thoughtful. And you know what? If this stays and sticks, Trump may be unbeatable. That is my thought. It's not a prediction at this point. It's simply a thought. And hey, you know what? It is a tremendous honor to be able to talk to you every day here on the airwaves. I want to make sure that I thank everyone who made this show possible, including the inimitable Sean McNeil, chief engineer, and all of our sponsors, and you, because, you know, without you, we don't have a show. And always appreciate your calls, your interaction, and your support here on the Tim Donnelly Show. God bless you and Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show out.